Well, hello everybody, boys and girls. Thank you for joining me in this beautiful Saturday morning in North Texas. As you can see from the background here, there's still some ice, snow. We just got through some pretty cold weather this past few days, past week actually. And a couple of days ago, this was completely good for snow. Now we're able to walk around, enjoying the sun a little bit, get some vitamin D. As you can see, I'm wearing the sweater to my alma mater. This is UT Arlington. Go Mavericks, yay. And our guest for today actually has something to do with higher education, specifically the bias against Asians in higher education. His name is Mr. Yukong Zhao. He works out of Florida. And I hope you give him your time to listen, especially as he explains what the struggles we're going through right now and where he came from, and a little bit more about him too. So thank you for joining me again. Please hit the subscribe button. I'll see y'all. Mr. Yukong Zhao, hailing from mainland China and now a Florida resident, he's the president of the Asian American Coalition for Education and a business strategist, formerly the director of global planning for Siemens Energy Inc., and now the president of Gulfway International LLC. He's also the author of The Chinese Secrets for Success, 5 Inspiring Confucian Values. It's now available on Amazon. So, Mr. Zhao, thank you for joining me. All right. So first off,
thank you for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate it. First off, I found out that you were a congressional candidate. I think it was in 2018. So I thought that was real fascinating.
2020.
Was it 2020?
Yeah,
oh, yeah. Oh, 2020. Also, it was actually very recent. Yeah. So one thing I found out during your run in Florida, I found out that your father was actually one of those persecuted by Mao Zedong during the Cultural Revolution. I believe I saw that in one of your ads. Now, for those that are unfamiliar with the Cultural Revolution, it is the social political purge that happened to the enemies of the Communist Party of China, which eventually became very violent. So tell me, Mr. Zhao, how your upbringing in this environment contributed to the person that you are today?
Yeah, I came to America in 1992, right, to pursue my American dream. But throughout my journey, by living through both China and especially during the 1960s under dictator Chairman Mao, and also lives and thriving in America, which a country gives us freedom, I feel a very strong contrast. Over there during Chinese Cultural Revolution, right? Chairman Mao used propaganda machines, red guards, and kind of like censorship, political persecution, and a lot of things to control his power. End of the day, why he promised the good life to the poor. End of the day, he not only destroyed the life of the rich, also starved to death tens of millions of Chinese people. Many are poor parents. So the reason I was running for the U.S. Congress is I don't want this kind of tragedy happen to my family, happen to hundreds of millions of Chinese people, also happen to America. So I want to say this is a country of freedom. But that country, especially under Chairman Mao, is really dictatorship. Is a very brutal, authoritarian rule. We don't want it happening.
I think those of us who immigrated here, from another country, really appreciate how America has really given us this opportunity to be able to have our voice and to be able to express ourselves, pursue our dreams and our passions. However, you were talking about like during that time that during Mao's era that there was a lot of censorship, a lot of it almost sounds like the cancel culture that we're having today. And some people have actually had this comparison where the cancel culture today is kind of similar to how it was during when the Cultural Revolution started. What say you, sir?
I want to say, unfortunately, is very similar, right? Here, over there, Chairman Mao and the communists use some kind of untrue propaganda, set up their moral authority, right?
Hmm.
They claim, all the working class, peasants were exploited by the landlord, by the capitalist, right? And he said the Communist Party is going to save the peasants, give the prosperity to parents, right?
Hmm.
And also they use really the like the untrue premise to really
Hmm.
establish moral authority. That's number one. Very similar to what is happening
Yeah.
today. For example, the radical left claim, this country has systematic racism, which is totally untrue. They use that to establish moral authority that
Hmm.
is, unfounded. We
Hmm.
do have pocket, you know, issues in terms of racism, but overall, this country in this regard has done, I think, the best than most other countries.
Hmm.
So that is the first thing. Second thing is they use the political censorship
Hmm.
to suppress opposition. To really today we're experiencing the cancel culture, right? Is
Hmm.
very similar. And another thing is they rewrite the history. For example, during Chinese Cultural Revolution, they all traditional cultural value like Confucian value
Hmm.
were totally denounced or was not allowed to be included in the education,
Hmm.
children's education. So everybody was brainwashed by the communist stuff. So that led to a lot of people blindly follow Chairman Mao. And so today, the similar things, we have great founding father like George
Hmm.
Washington, Thomas Jefferson, although they made some mistake, for example, on slavery.
Yeah.
But
No, nobody's perfect.
when we look at a historical figure, we always look at, what is his contribution versus mistake he
Hmm.
made. If only part, a small portion of the mistake, his contribution is much stronger, over with the weakness. We should really still respect them, right? When
Hmm.
we're not endorse like slavery system,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
nobody is perfect.
So you were mentioning, Confucian values, and it's kind of steers into the main subject where I found you, and asked you to come join me today. Is because of education, and that's one of the biggest things in Confucian values is education. And I think all of us who grown up in an Asian family know how important education is for for our children, for all of us. But there is something going on in the education system right now that's affecting a lot of Asians, especially Asian Americans here, and that's something that you've been fighting about. So I want to ask: during the Trump administration, you and your organization, which is the Asian American Coalition for Education, were instrumental in the lawsuits regarding the racial bias against Asian Americans in the institutions of higher learning. Most of our audience probably don't know that this type of discrimination exists and it's happening in our schools. So why don't you just give us a quick background of what is going on there and kind of explain to our audience why you founded this organization?
Sure. As a matter of fact, ever since 1990s, right, some Asian American already filed complaint against Harvard. And there was many study in America in all the good high selective schools, colleges around the country, 42 states.
Hmm.
They all use the admission model of Harvard University to discriminate against Asian American children. Basically, they use higher admission standard, use a de facto racial quota, and also racial stereotype.
Mhm.
I want to give a couple examples. One is the higher admission standard, right? According to the study by Tom's Associate of Princeton University, for Asian applicant, in order to get Americans' top universities, or given all the conditions are equal, we have to score 140 points in SAT higher than the white,
Mhm.
270 points higher than Hispanic, and
Mhm.
450 points higher than the black.
Mhm.
Also, we have suffered a lot of personal rating, like say, they claim we don't have leadership, we don't have like risk-taking attitude, which is insulting because
Oh yeah.
Asian Americans are among the leading entrepreneurship,
Mhm.
leading in technology innovation, technology startup, right? So they use this kind of stereotype to discriminate Asian Americans. So as a result, what is happening is in Asian American community, all children, we don't have like a lot of crime issue, drug issue,
Mhm.
but what we suffer is really depression because a lot of work, overwhelming workload, high admission standard, right? According to a survey by Inside, higher education,
Mhm.
32% of admission office from a public college and 42 from the private college admitted they use higher admission standard, right, to discriminate against Asian American. So we
Yeah.
have even some children suffer, because high workload. Some children even suffer like, some psychology issue, even
Mhm.
a few like commit suicide. So this
Wow.
is a huge discrimination against Asian American, and also this is number one, the only one in terms of use race-based policy discriminate any racial group.
Mhm.
That is currently is happening. No,
Mhm.
in the like 19th or 20th century, we still have Jimmy Crow, other things, right?
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
today, all the other historic slavery, that kind of law being abolished.
Mhm.
But affirmative action is the only one. So that's the reason in 2014, I call upon Asian Americans united to support our children. And
Mhm.
then in May of 2015, we united 64 organizations, filed a complaint against Harvard.
Mhm.
1 year later, we united 132 organizations, filed complaint against Yale University. The good thing was, like Trump administration,
Mhm.
they launched investigation against Yale University, and we after the 2 year investigation, they found Yale University systematically discriminate Asian American
Oh
and
yeah.
white American, and then they launched a lawsuit last year.
Mhm.
But unfortunately, the Biden administration just dropped the lawsuit on February 3rd.
Yeah, I read in the Wall Street Journal that the Biden administration's DOJ just dropped a lawsuit right then and there, and that really disappointed me because what you were talking about, how it affected the kids, the children. Because when I was in high school, and I'm gonna tell you a personal story from me, and I grew up in South Texas, and even there, which not there's not a lot of Asian kids there, but even me, when I was taking my PSAT, I was told that if you're Asian, you're gonna need to score at least 100 points higher than the rest of everybody to have to be accepted. And it didn't hit me at that time, but then I just kind of felt pretty depressed. I felt like I felt discouraged with my work because as you well know, in Asian families, you have to excel in school, like or there's a meme going on right now that if you don't succeed, you bring shame almost. But thanks to God, I got through that. But going back to this whole issue, I believe that the racial bias against Asians in general, it doesn't just stop here, and I think this is why I think your work is very important because it just doesn't stop at the educational institutions. It actually would extend out to the workplace. As you well know, there has been some bias against Asians now in the tech field, in hiring in the tech field. There's a recent tech firm actually that was in trouble for posting in their job board that they would like to hire a quote non-Asian. So this type of racialist type of categorizing is actually bleeding into society, and it's feeding into the racist stereotypes of all of us. Now,
Uh,
if you could tell the Biden administration one thing, what kind of reform can they do right now if they take a look at this issue again seriously, and maybe even turn away from what they're doing now, and take a look at it seriously? What can they do right now to help Asian Americans not become one of these targets of racial discrimination in the field?
I want to tell you, when President Biden signed executive order on January 26th, right? He
Mm,
promised to really to fight for racism against Asian American.
mhm,
But very unfortunately, just 8 days later, right, his administration dropped the lawsuit against Yale University. So I really think, President Biden, if he really want to, take care, help Asian American communities, he needs really fulfill his promise.
mhm,
From education area, he should not really continue playing the identity politics. He
mhm,
should treat everybody the same, because according to 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, we have equal protection. The same thing as a great example you mentioned about a tech firm.
mhm.
They try to recruit somebody with non-Asian background. They see a blatant, discrimination
Oh
against
yeah.
Asian American. That should be banned, should be punished. So his U.S. Department of Justice should take a case on that.
Mhm,
So, but unfortunately, his administration, play a lot of identity politics in the name so-called diversity, and also that called racial equity.
mhm,
This country is built upon equal opportunity, built upon the meritocracy.
mhm.
It's not equal results, but what
Yeah.
they are promoting is equal results. So China during the Cultural Revolution, Chairman Mao, they implement the similar thing called equal results. End of the
Mhm,
day, nobody were incentivized to contribute. So China, went to like almost economic collapse,
mhm.
and everybody starved to death. That's the wrong direction. So they need to change the course. They need to treat everybody equally, just like what Dr. Martin Luther King said. We want our children to be judged by content, their character, also by their merit, not by their skin color.
Yeah, I totally agree. What do you think? Um, are you hopeful for the future of Asian Americans in America?
Yes, I think, no matter what, America is still greatest nation on earth. So I think currently we are hopeful is with the upcoming, like the lawsuits,
Mhm,
to basically Student for Federal Mission already filed the lawsuits ever since 2014 against Harvard University. Although we lose two ruling. One is in the district court of Boston, and
mhm,
also another is the first appeal court. Right now, this year is going to the U.S. Supreme Court, with majority of the justice who adhere to the U.S. Constitution, right?
mhm,
They prefer the so-called original list approach.
mhm.
So I hope, with that, the upcoming ruling from U.S. Supreme Court will ban the use of race in college admission. If that happens, it will, lead to the true equality to all American children. So
Mhm.
it will totally eliminate the legal discrimination against Asian American children.
All right. Well, I'll be watching closely for the cases to come, and I'll be watching your organization. Before we close, I have one more question for you, and
Mm.
it's kind of a curveball, but seeing that you've been a very successful businessman, and you've gone through a lot to come over here to America. And I see your book collection in the back there. I also have a book collection outside, and
Mm.
it's a sign of a wise man. So, seeing that what you've learned over the years, what advice would you give a younger Yukong Zhao?
So I guess for younger generation of Americans, I think they care about this society is great. But what I live through is, when we look at the public policies, you need to look at not only the objective, the purpose of policy, you need also look at the effectiveness, what's results. Example, socialism, communism, right? Their purpose is so honorable. They want to save the poor, right? Bring the prosperity to the poor. End of the day, they killed millions of people, lead to disastrous, not economic results, not only to the rich, also to the poor. So I want a younger generation really look at each public policy, look at not only their purpose, also look at effectiveness, look at the results. Is there the mechanism really generate good results? If not, no matter how glorified the policy is, we should denounce, reject them.
All right. Mr. Zhao, thank you very much for your time. I truly appreciate it. I wish you the best on all your endeavors. And
thank you very much for your interview.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you.